Well, g'day guys. As I just let you know a few minutes ago, I'm coming from a new area today. I'm overlooking the Rhone River today. I'm up next to a very famous statue. If you can see Notre Dame de Montagne in the background. So the area I am is part of the Santiago de Compostela walking trail that runs right through the Alps and down into Spain and so forth. And you can, if I turn around, you can see part of the path behind me, and my trusty assistant, Chief Happiness Officer Dakar Dingo, just walking away in the background. But the pathway around here traverses, like I said, all the way down the Alps. You can go from Switzerland all the way down to the coast. It's very popular as this trend towards outdoor living, outdoor activities, outdoor holidays is kicking in. We're seeing very strong demand right around the world for outdoors. In fact, we're starting to see some M&A activity, which I'll come down to a little bit later. But first, I thought I'd give you a little bit of an update into Nomad Stays. So, as many of you know, we're a startup. We launched in January. We started taking bookings in February, and just in time for coronavirus. So all came to a screaming halt at the end of February. But it was interesting. We actually had a heads up. We could see from the data, from the stats, from our website usage and so forth, that there was a massive drop-off. And it wasn't something we'd mucked up in the tech in this case. The joys of a startup. But we saw it was coming. So you may remember that most people didn't really get serious about the impacts of isolation and coronavirus until about the middle of March. But we saw it was coming. We saw people getting very worried. We started preparing for it. And as it turned out, it became a dead stop for us and for many people in the travel industry. Luckily, we're bootstrapped, so it didn't cost us much to keep going. We doubled down and built a whole lot more tech, which is what we did. But we're finding that there was a lot of other startups, particularly around Europe here, that have since pivoted out of the travel industry. They didn't have the financial resources to keep going. They didn't have the markets, and it doesn't look like the markets will occur for a couple of years. Just been talking with a lot of British startup, for instance, travel startups. But what we have found that there's been a steady increase from that sort of middle of March time period on. So there was that gap of about 2 or 3 weeks was really dead, and then things started picking up again. So our membership numbers have been going up every month, right through the isolation, right through the coronavirus, extended. And obviously with a lot of properties not getting the business this year, particularly in the northern summer, which is their peak time. Most of the travel industry up here really relies on summer to make money for the rest of the year. We found that, again, our property listings were going up around the world as people were looking to diversify out of their normal leisure and business markets. Business travel still very much dead. Leisure, big switch to regional areas, outdoor areas like we're standing in today, where people are hiking around, and rock climbing is a great rock climbing area around here. So that's been really interesting. We've got places in the Azores coming on stream right now. It's really happy to sort of see that kick in over the weekend, and Mexico, the new places in Mexico. So we're starting to spread out around the world. I think we're in about 35, 36, 7 countries now, which is pretty good. We've got over 1,000 rooms available. So we're doing okay. A lot of people are doing a lot tougher than us. We've seen a lot of big funded startups just laying off people. So back to that M&A activity. So this week, actually today, was an announcement where US company called Hipcamp, which rents out camping spots on private properties, which are lovely spots, but not necessarily national parks. So they're generally private properties. Hipcamp, which is quite a successful startup in the US over the last couple of years, they've actually made their first significant purchase in the Southern Hemisphere. So they've launched into Australia and taken over a company, very similar name, called Youcamp. Youcamp is about 3 years old and was very much based on the same philosophy of accessing private areas for camping, private properties. And you might want to say, why would you want to do that? Well, national parks, even though something like 20% of Australia is national park, you can still get very crowded at places, and caravan parks are quite intensive. And right now, there's this reason to keep away from crowding. The laws are constantly changing. Again, staying in Australia, we've just seen a lady jailed for 3 months for crossing the border illegally, just a state border, not even a foreign border. She snuck over in the back of a truck, wanted to see the boyfriend. She got caught out. She got sentenced to 3 months in jail, and who knows what sort of dollars are going to come from that. Other parts of Australia, like I think it's New South Wales, the largest state, they've just banned dancing because dancing has become one of those areas that are spreading diseases. A lot of spreading of the virus has been occurring in gyms around the world. So there's increased attention in gymnasiums about cleaning and ventilating particularly. All in all, people are heading to fresh air, outdoor restaurants, outdoor events, all that sort of thing. Even here in France, you still are allowed some fairly large events with decent distancing going on, maybe as large as 5,000, but they've just tightened the laws a little bit more, that you need permission and a good plan in place for that to occur, because there has been an uptick in infections right through Europe and here in France. So there are now 21 out of 100 odd prefectures that are now listed red again, and masks mandatory this time, both in buildings and in the streets. So Lyon, which is about an hour away, when you're downtown, masks are on. Grenoble, further into the mountains there, about half an hour away, same sort of thing. For us, we're quite lucky. It's still very much a green zone around here, as is about 80% of France. So still very much green, although becoming harder for people in certain countries to travel. Like people based here in France, like us, we're being quarantined when we go to the UK or Norway and now Denmark. So this is going to continue to occur. At the same time, some of these borders are being relaxed a little bit further. The United States has quietly dropped a lot of their border restrictions to stop people coming in all except China, I should say. But many people are allowed to head to the US right now. I'm not quite sure how they're going to go. The infection rates have been very high there in the US, and there's still quite a lot of nervousness, but we talk to the US every day. By and large, people are just getting back down to business again, albeit, in the last couple of months before a presidential election. So not quite a normal time, but is it ever a normal time in the United States? It's a pretty wild sort of a place. Same sort of thing in parts of Australia. Elections starting to kick in, and COVID becomes a political football around the place, as we've seen in Bulgaria and Serbia and who knows where next. Interesting, great debate over who's going to come out with the right vaccines. Who's coming out with the vaccines first? How were these vaccines able to be put together in such a fast time? Some really good research about companies that started preparing for this a few years ago, and then they just needed to update their technology, which is one of the reasons they've been so quick this year. So again, like last week, there's probably at least 3 vaccines hitting the markets from different countries over maybe the Christmas period by all accounts. 3 separate vaccines from what we've been seeing in stage 3, which is the last human trials before it gets released, and these are mass human trials, which means they've already done some preliminary small human trials. All good news. Most countries are not expecting any major change for a while. Again, Thailand announced last week they're not opening until 2021, and this week Indonesia, same thing, not until 2021. So all you people hoping to get to Bali, might be a little bit longer before you get down there. So with summer pretty much finishing almost before it was started this year, there's another move by governments to pump up a longer season, trying to get people to shift their holidays, trying to take holidays out of the normal season and extend the tourism benefit. Because in the Northern Hemisphere, it's likely to be a very long, cold, hard winter without much tourism going on. So ski tourism around the Alps here, for instance, it's generally a close encounter environment, probably not going to be enjoyed that much by crowds, and so ski season looking a little bit tough. Southern Hemisphere, another couple of months as things start warming up, things will be great. You'll probably end up doing lots of camping, the caravanning kicking in, tenting, getting outdoors, a lot more hiking, the same as the Northern Hemisphere has been seeing for a while. So maybe if you're in the south, you might want to start thinking about booking ahead of time to make sure that you're going to get, one, a property that's open, and two, a great place at one of these properties. Remembering that a lot of the travel industry is still hurting. They don't have money, they've let staff go, they may not have even opened yet. We've got a number of properties in Southeast Asia that have been in that position as well. Okay, so we're also into reporting season. Reporting season on the stock markets around the world and by governments. And we're starting to see massive losses, massive deficits coming out. So governments are going to get pretty desperate. Just reading about the smallest state in Australia, the ACT, pretty much not much bigger than the city, just registered a nearly $1 billion Australian dollars, say 700 million US dollars deficit. Huge number for a population of about 350,000 people. So if that is experienced all around the world, you're going to see some big debts and a lot of debates in government about how to pull out of this recession. And these things tend to take a while. So, we might be looking at tax increases. We might be looking at stimulation for travel. I've been seeing gift certificates and restaurant certificates being used in the UK, for instance, to encourage people to get out there and use restaurants. So keep an eye out for that. Governments are going to get pretty desperate to make this happen, as is big businesses. Qantas, that Australian airline, just announced a $2 billion Australian dollars loss. Big money for Australians. Consequently, there's more of a drop-off of people. Staff, customers, all that sort of thing. They've announced, as I mentioned last week, that they won't be flying internationally till at least July 2021. So nearly another year before flights. The Australian government still has very high restrictions on even Australians returning. It's basically one flight a day, 4,000 people a week allowed into the country. Other countries have changed that. So down the road from here, in a beautiful part of the world, is Croatia. Doing some great tourism business. 22 million people a year, I think, hitting Croatia each year. If you haven't been there, you've got to get down there. The islands, the beaches are beautiful. The people are really quite nice. The food is stunning. And the architecture and history, just magnificent. And weather is beautiful. But Croatia took the view of keeping their borders open and risking maybe a higher infection rate and maybe some reputational damage if it got out of control, in return for keeping the money flowing. And so they've been managing to do some good business with a lot of European visitors. Again, not so much the foreigners, well, although in saying that, Croatia was one of the few places that allowed Americans to visit, and still does. So it's one of those places that if you are an American in Europe, you might not be welcome in many countries, but Croatia's out there looking for assistance. So, consider this sort of thing. Greece is another beautiful part of the world, just around the corner there. Lots of islands, very much on sale at the moment. So I don't know if you've been noticing, while technically summer might be finishing in a few days, we're going to have some great weather by the looks of things right through the next couple of months. So don't think summer's finished, just if your traditional thinking has finished. That's all good news. If you're in Europe and you're travelling around where the borders are open a little bit, the US probably going to get the same sort of thing. Mexico business is actually still quite strong between the US and Mexico. Canada slowing down. They've already just recorded an increase in their unoccupancy of their hotels. Their Nationwide, they're about 42% occupancy, which is less than half what they would normally do. A couple of standout areas, more in those outdoor tourism areas like British Columbia, for instance. So lots of fresh air, lots of nature, lots of ways to get away from crowds of people, lots of places to spread out with. Their occupancy, their hotel usage there is better than a lot of places. So congratulations. Rates are down, good for tourists, maybe, at least they're still in business there in BC. So, if they can last a little bit longer, then they can pick up the upside in the next couple of years. All right, last thing, as we know every week, there are tweaks and changes on these border issues all the time. A lot more notification coming out earlier. It's sort of said, just be cautious that you may be asked to isolate if you go to this country or that country. This is often preceding an actual lockdown, so it's not quite as last minute notice as it has been. You've at least got a little bit of preparation, so you can either maybe speed up your trip, confirm it, or change it if you think you're going to get stuck, all depending on your own schedules. But the governments are getting better at sharing this information out there. There's a lot of new tech sites coming out and making it easier to find it around. You can have a look on our Facebook page for some of these great tech sites that are putting all this stuff together. Different countries, different parts of the world are being highlighted by different players. I'm going to probably wrap up there. Thanks again for joining me. Great to have you here in the Alps and the Rhone River. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Of course, come along and join Nomad Stays. Drop us a note. Tell us what's happening, give us an update on things, how they are around where you're staying. And if you're a property looking to tap into this growing remote worker and freelancer activity, go on, come and join with us, and let's see if we can get some business from longer stayers. Cheers for now.